Welcome to the green room for DisrupTV. We've got a special co-host, Larry Dignan, and we've got Elle, our amazing producer. But of course, we got our great guest. And so we'll introduce everybody in reverse order of appearance. So coming live somewhere in New York City, Catalina, James, tell us more what you're talking about today, and where are you coming in from?
Hi, we're calling in from New York City, and we're here to talk about our book, Smart Startups.
And I'm Jim Sherman, and here's a little picture of our just published book, Smart Startups.
Ooh, look at that. Look at that. Let's see if we can digitize that. We've got it digitally. There we go.
Ooh, impressive.
That's nice.
Impressive.
So very cool. Look forward to hearing about the book. It's amazing and some really cool insights. So cool. Welcome. All right, let's go to Trevor. Where are you coming in from?
Hey, Ray. It's coming in from Scottsdale, actually. And we're going to be speaking about generative AI today. And of course, it's top of mind with ChatGPT and OpenAI, etc. And also talking about some of the challenges we're facing today in this amazing environment, right? So.
Yeah, it is. I mean, can you think about it? Like last year, this time, no one cared what AI was. It's pretty cool. Yeah. So we're going to talk more about that. Oren, what are we talking about today?
Hey, Ray, coming in from South Florida, and we'll be talking about what Sygnia is seeing in the cyber threat landscape, some best practices that organizations can follow, and some interesting trends.
Got it. Other than, maybe you don't want a $350 million ransomware attack. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
But a large major casino somewhere. Very cool. Well, with that, hey, we're going to kick off the show. I'll turn it back to you, Al, and let's do the count. Ready, everyone?
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. We're here with DisrupTV today, and we got some amazing guests here. But first, I'm Ray Wang with Constellation Research, and we got our special co-host, Larry Dignan. He's the editor-in-chief of Constellation Insights. Larry was most recently Salonis Media's editor-in-chief, where he sat at the intersection between media and marketing. He's also the former editor-in-chief of ZDNet. And if you followed ZDNet, this was the benchmark for B2B media, and he was there actually for more than 2 decades. And he's also published articles in CNET, Knowledge at Wharton, WallStreetWeek.com, Interactive TV, New York Times, and Financial Planning Magazine. So he's also an adjunct professor at Temple University. And if you're lucky enough to take his class, it is an amazing one. And he's also on the advisory board for the Fox Business School's Institute of Business and Information Technology. Welcome, Larry.
Thanks, Ray. Glad to be here.
Well, hey, thank you. And of course, he's subbing in for Vala Afshar. We're somewhere on a plane, but we're not going to tell where. But I'm here with our amazing guest, and it's not about us. It's about our amazing guests, starting with Oren Wortman. He's the VP of Cybersecurity Services at Sygnia. And more importantly, he's one with amazing amounts of cybersecurity experience. He's been here for 25 years talking about technology and security consulting, of course, serving as a trusted advisor to clients across a ton of verticals. And he's recently led a cybersecurity advisory practice at one of the leading cyber insurance brokerages. You'll have to tell us where. You don't have to be so mysterious. Anyways, he's also held the leadership and consulting roles at KPMG, Grant Thornton, RSA Security, ran his own consulting business in the healthcare tech space, and of course, serves as CTO for a New York-based publishing company. So he's often called upon by journalists, by the press, by leading industry events to share his insights. And we're super absolutely happy to have him here. He's also a graduate of CUNY. So thank you for being here. You can follow him on Twitter at OWORTMAN. Welcome to the show, Oren.
Thanks, Ray. Happy to be here, and would definitely like to be remiss. I would be remiss if I didn't start by sending my thoughts and prayers to all my colleagues and friends and family who are going through some difficult times abroad in Israel. Sygnia is a company headquartered in Tel Aviv, so obviously our thoughts and prayers are with them.
Yeah, no, it's quite an interesting situation. So same as well. Larry, go ahead.
All right. So I'm very interested in cybersecurity, especially since all these companies have to disclose things now, which is fun for me, probably not so much for the companies. But why do you think this threat landscape is going to get worse in the next year?
It's a great question, Larry, and it's and you actually hit on one of the reasons, and it's this very complex landscape of decision making that companies now have to go through while facing a crisis. So you have organizations in the middle of a battle, basically, and they're challenged with the new SEC regulation, 4 days to disclose. Obviously, this is compounding the complexity of decision making and operating in a crisis. But that being said, why is the threat landscape itself becoming more treacherous? First of all, there's been a huge increase in volume that we've seen from Q1 to Q2, especially Q2 to Q3, a little bit more incremental in nature. But if compared to the same time and same period last year, we're talking about almost a double in the number of known ransomware attacks. Of course, there are many that are not reported, not disclosed. So this is definitely one factor, is the increase in volume. I think there's also this emergence of new splinter groups, offshoots of previously well-known groups, ransomware as a service, which is this affiliate model, continuously increasing in size and participation. And what this all leads to is a lot less predictability than we've seen in the past from the threat groups. So makes the, of course, protection element more difficult, makes the response element a little bit more difficult, and makes ultimately resolving this situation with these threat groups more difficult. I think there are some other forces at play. We see capabilities and sophistication of the threat groups increasing. Capabilities that were typically the domain and in the context of nation states are now in the hands of these criminally motivated threat groups. So this again makes our day-to-day jobs as defenders significantly more difficult. And then I think additionally, we see this increase, which has been a trend. We saw it recently with Move It and Go Anywhere. These software supply chain attacks, where these threat groups have realized that by actually executing on one single attack, they can actually hit a much wider universe of organizations and victims, increasing their ability to, unfortunately, monetize these things. There are also, of course, geopolitical trends at play. And we'll leave the current crisis off the table in that respect. But even going back to the Russia-Ukraine, going back to the isolation of certain rogue nation states through sanctions, it increases their need to create revenue, to monetize themselves. And so we believe that there is a greater collaboration or a freedom to act with a greater impunity in these nation states by these criminally motivated groups. And this, of course, also increases the complexity. And lastly, and as you mentioned, in a topic that will be talked about later, the adoption of AI and other emerging technologies is also definitely increasing the risk of the landscape, right? The threat groups have a much faster adoption time of new technologies. And we on the defender side are a lot more risk averse. This creates this race to adopt these new technologies and to utilize them both on the offensive and defensive side. While we see great possibilities for AI in cybersecurity, we do also have to be conscious that the threat actors are in fact racing to adopt the same technologies. So this, of course, creates additional complexity.
my bots will be battling your bots. And my question is, why are we always on the defense? Why is there no offense, right? Why don't we go offense on Fin7 or Darkside or UNC 2452? I mean, we're like sitting ducks. Like, what is this?
Yeah,
these guys are syndicating, and every time we raise our insurance premiums, they're like, hey, interesting pot of gold. Let's go for that. So
it's absolutely a great question, and it's a question that clients ask us all the time. Why can't we have information? For example, sometimes a threat group will accidentally leave some information behind about where their infrastructure is located or where they've exfiltrated the data to. And clients will ask us, can we reach out and, let's say, hack back to reclaim our stolen data? And this is the line that we, on the defensive side, on the ethical side of things, we don't cross that line back. We leave this to law enforcement, but this is definitely a gray area and a question that comes up frequently.
I'm waiting for some citizen activism. Back to you, Larry.
Is the idea that you can't strike back concerns about scale and focus? For instance, cybercrime, it's kind of what they do for a living. If you're an enterprise, you've got a business to run and all these other things to worry about. Is that why there's not, aside from if we took aside all the ethical stuff, and
the legality, right?
Well, that too, details. But is there a question of focus, right? Like you hone in on what you're good at.
It is absolutely, I agree, a question of focus. But this is an area where collaboration with trusted partners and industry experts, if it were legal, if there were not those ethical concerns, then it would be possible, right? Because you do have players such as Sygnia who do have those capabilities, but this is not a line that we cross for the reasons that are mentioned.
Got it. But this leaves most organizations like sitting ducks, right? They can't handle these threats. They can't handle these breaches, right? You don't know what you don't know. And short of a funny PC-matic ad, seriously, but what can they do, right? Because it's like there's only so much you can spend. You can only allocate so much in your budget, and you're basically just playing a probability game here, right?
You are the common belief in cyber defense is, of course, focused on what can we do to minimize the likelihood of such an attack hitting us. There is no such thing as 100% secure or 100% prevention. But we do know that there's a lot of commonality in the tactics and techniques that threat groups use. That very basic measures that we as an industry have been talking about for many, many years, if just followed properly, could actually create additional resistance for the threat groups and prevent a great majority of attacks. Now, that's one side of it. The other side is minimizing the impact of those attacks, because again, it's about when it happens and how can you reduce the impact to your organization should such an event happen. And this goes into all of the topics around preparedness, ability to detect in a quick way, to respond in an efficient way, to not be making decisions during the crisis that are critical to the response effort, but actually knowing those decisions up front. Do we communicate through PR externally? Do we communicate to our customers? What are our regulatory requirements, Larry, as you mentioned, in regard to the SEC disclosures, and many other things. So there are many issues that can, in fact, be handled well in advance from a preparedness perspective, as well as there are many steps from a defense prevention perspective that can be implemented. And these, we do see organizations who take these steps have a marked difference in both the likelihood of such an event happening, as well as the impact should it happen. So a prepared response is always going to be more efficient than an unprepared response.
So as far as those responses where, say some attack inevitably happens, which my guess is it will, in your response, how much should you think about ransomware, payouts? Is this a case where, I'm kind of fascinated by the math behind it? Like, do you pay or not pay versus you got to draw a line in the sand, it's unethical, et cetera. But, as we get more disclosures, we're probably going to see companies that actually, have to disclose they paid something. I guess, how do you think of it as, an expert and third party?
Yeah, and real quickly, take like the case in Las Vegas, right? A hospital paid, a casino paid, and another casino decided that they weren't going to pay, right? So,
Right.
And I would be curious to see how they look back in retrospect on that decision in some weeks, months from now. I mean, we've all seen the numbers as far as the impact to the organization.
10 million a day. 10 million a day. So
yeah, over 100 million in total. Whereas their competitor, who did decide to pay, paid out, I believe it was 15 million or whatever it was. Fact is, this is again, putting aside the ethical element of payment versus non-payment, I do not think that there should be a law passed in preventing organizations from making that decision. This should be a very personal, organization by organization, risk-based decision based on, of course, the impact to their business, their ability to recover. Listen, in a perfect world, every organization would take the right steps from a technical disaster recovery perspective, have confidence in their ability to restore operations from such an attack, and then there would be no need to pay, right? Every organization would take better data protection steps around encryption and protection of data, and then again, there would be no need to pay. But assuming that you have those impacts, this is very much an organization by organization and needs to be left at that level, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's crazy. Go ahead, Larry. Sorry.
So if you do pay out, what steps do you have to make sure you're not hit again? I mean, I guess the remediation probably looks the same, right?
Is there honor among thieves is really the question.
Right, exactly.
So historically speaking, and this is changing a little bit with a lot of these splinter groups, but historically speaking, there is honor amongst thieves in this case. We've actually received in the course of many ransomware negotiations that we've conducted for our clients on their behalf, we've received many messages, and the message is fairly standard. Our reputation is more important than money, they say. Because at the end of the day, if they don't follow through with their commitments to not disclose the data, without providing you a decryption mechanism, nobody will ever pay them going forward. So in that respect, they do value their reputation. Now, as far as then getting hit by a different group, of course, there's no guarantee that you wouldn't. And remediation, you're correct, does look very much the same, whether you pay or don't pay. You still have to figure out what were the root causes of the attack, how did they get in, how did they compromise our systems, and make sure that those things are closed down appropriately.
So where does purple teaming come into all this from a proactive defense, or when do I apply adversarial security, right? What are people looking at for those things?
This is a great question, Ray. So we at Sygnia actually embed adversarial tactics simulation into almost every engagement that we do on the proactive side of the house. We feel that this is really one of the main and most important ways that you can truly understand what is the universe of possible from a tactics and techniques perspective that a threat actor can execute in your environment, and then prioritize the remediation steps in the context of what was truly executed in your environment. Now, purple teaming is a really interesting one because it serves a dual purpose, right? So it's actually doing that adversarial simulation. So you're building out true kill chains, as we call them, to see what a threat actor can do. But it has a focus on training for organizations, security operations teams, and incident responders. So we can actually see how well are they detecting what we're doing, how well are they responding to what we're doing, and how well are they shutting it down, and then training those teams on new techniques to actually detect quicker and also respond in a more efficient way.
So is that kind of the ROI? Like if you're looking at this from the enterprise buyer perspective, and a lot of times working with cybersecurity, right? It's preventing the ROI is a little fuzzier because you're preventing something as opposed to, some productivity gain. Is that sort of, testing and simulation? Is that part of the ROI?
We spoke earlier about we're just sitting here like we're sitting ducks, and what can we do? The preparedness element, and when I say preparedness, this is in many ways and across many organizational aspects, right? So there's, of course, at the executive level, preparedness around crisis management, decision making, legal, regulatory, PR, comms. So that's one side of it. But at a technical level, the ROI is in fact in training their responders, enhancing their detection capabilities, enhancing their visibility within their own environment. Something that we like to use as an example and an analogy from, let's say, more terrestrial warfare, right? Know the terrain. And this is something that we know from conventional and terrestrial conflict. This is very similar in cyber war because we do have something to our advantage. To our advantage, we know every single time where the battle will be fought. It will be fought in our networks,
Yep.
in our cloud environments,
Yep.
in our manufacturing facilities, and we own those environments. We are doing, as an industry, a huge disservice to ourselves by not having proper visibility, not having a comprehensive asset management program, having as organizations shadow IT. So IT that's not under any central governance structure, assets pop up, nobody knows what they are they protected properly? So ROI is absolutely about training and enhancing capabilities. Again, not necessarily with the sole intent of prevention, but the faster you can detect and the more efficiently you can respond at the end of the day is the only thing that will minimize impact. And that really is the end game, is the impact.
Yeah, no, this is wild. And I think a lot of organizations are trying to make that cost benefit analysis that Larry's talking about. Do we pay more now? Do we invest more now? Do we hit the ransomware? What's the likelihood? What's the probability? How do we make that decision? So we're here with Oren Wortman, Vice President of Cybersecurity Services, Sygnia. Thank you so much for being on the show and scaring the crap out of. No, just kidding. Thank you so much for being on the show and giving us something to think about. So
Thanks so much.
Twitter
Thanks.
or X, depending what you want to call it, at OWORTMAN. So good luck to your team. So
thank you.
Thanks.
Wow. And
yeah,
from cybersecurity, what else can we talk about to scare the crap out of us? No, I'm just kidding. So there's a lot going on here. And of course, we have our next guest. And we're going to be talking a lot about this topic, which is going on since November last year. So let's bring on our next guest here, Trevor. Thank you for being here. Trevor Templar. He's the CEO of Aviso AI. He's the president and CEO. And of course, this is a revenue operating system that helps go-to-market teams deliver really good forecasts. 98% is what they say. And of course, win more deals with an AI chief of staff. Don't we all want one? Trevor architected that guided selling vision for Aviso, driving 20 plus patents across conversational intelligence, auto ML, AI sync, and people graphs. I love graphs. You guys all know that. He crystallized more than 20 years of the B2B selling experience in the first end-to-end single revenue platform with secure underlying AI. And Trevor leads Aviso's mission to provide every sales team an AI-guided future where humans and AI work together to exceed expectations and goals. Prior to that, Trevor helped industry leaders embrace advanced sales technologies as CRO at Tact AI, Cypher Cloud, and as a SaaS board advisor. He also drove Salesforce's transformation as a leader from mid-market to large enterprise from 2009 to 2014, going from 800 million to 4 billion. And of course, quickly moving and scaling its top producing region, growing it also into an enterprise behemoth. So we can follow him on Twitter at @Templar or X, if you like to call it that. And thank you for being on the show. Welcome to the show, Trevor.
Well, Ray, it's a pleasure. And wow, that was some introduction. What am I to talk about anymore? I mean, you just laid out everything about me and what we do. But it's exciting.
We're good. Let's go to your AI bot. We'll have them do all the talking.
Yeah, I know. That's the point, right? I mean, taking the suck work out of our day, as AEs, having been at McKinsey, and then of course, actually carrying a bag versus talking about it as an AE, which was transformational for me. And then of course, as an SVP, EVP, etc., running large enterprise sales at Salesforce, I think I've never met an account executive, who gets up in the morning, has a cup of coffee, and is like, "I'm so excited about updating CRM today, sweetheart. This is just going to be an amazing day, right?" So,
You just haven't met the right sales rep. I don't know what you're talking about. No.
yeah, I know, Ray. I'm looking for that unicorn right now who's like, "Hey, I love CRM, Trev. I mean, it just gives me so much value, right?"
So I guess let's start at the top.
Sure.
What's the pitch for Aviso? What's the dream? What's the problem you're trying to solve?
Look, in this environment, I mean, we're facing uncertainty on every side, right? And both from the gamut of macroeconomic events in terms of an inverted yield curve, interest rate yields that go up one day, go down the next, geopolitical issues, which some could say are black swan events. I think of them more as gray rhino, because I think at the end of the day, all of us expected something to happen. The question was when, where, and it was about time. The sheer immensity of what's happened, in Israel and the terror there is highly unfortunate. But in this scenario, as a sales rep, the ability, and as a revenue leader, the ability to predict revenue, mitigate risk, and really deliver quarter after quarter, to your board. Obviously, if you're a startup, if you're private or private equity, or to the street, is tantamount to whether or not you're going to be in this job, 12, 16, 18 months down the road. So Aviso was built AI first, or purpose built, with AI in mind. And we think of ourselves as the operating system for revenue today. And what's unique about Aviso is our ability to really be able to map out what we call the deal flow, right? Right from leads, marketing campaigns, marketing attribution, engagement, first engagement, as we call it, and then moving through the deal cycle. And then, of course, what's really important and top of mind for most CROs and CEOs today is revenue retention, right? A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And it's important to be able to keep your customers with you, serve them in a manner that's that addresses their requirements and needs, and ensures that their competition doesn't come in and take them away. I think SaaS as a whole, is turned on its head upside down. I mean, if you ask folks 2 years ago, you sold a multi-year contract, and that was it. I mean, but unfortunately, in this environment, multi-year contracts are only worth what's on paper. So if you're not seeing the alarm signals way up front in terms of whether or not you're really addressing value for your customers, you're going to have a very short tenure, as a CRO. And the average tenure right now in Silicon Valley is about 18 months, which is crazy, right? Because that means you get about 3 or 6 months before you get up to speed, find the toilet, try to understand what your team can deliver. And then, of course, the board's like, well, are you gonna blow your numbers out? And are we going to expect 100% growth? Because guess what? Your predecessor was amazing. Albeit your predecessor was there in an economic environment which is vastly different. But those small details just tend to be glossed over, don't they? So.
Or you better get a darn good demand gen person. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
But here's the basic problem. Let's just say it. Salesforce automation doesn't work. It is manual. It is tedious. Like, I'm doing all the work. What the heck happened? Why don't we just fix SFA? Right? I've got Rev Intelligence. I got Rev Optimization. I got sales engagement. Right? I got Rev Data Op platforms. Like, all this stuff is trying to fix the basic problem that SFA doesn't work. Let's just fix SFA. I'm sorry to get you all riled up. Like, why don't we just fix SFA?
But you got to realize, right from, and I'm a student of history because I believe at the end of the day, if you don't pay attention to what's happened in the past, you're bound to repeat those mistakes in the future, right? And if you go right back to when Tom Siebel first went to Larry, right? And I'm dating myself, obviously.
Yep. Oasis.
Yeah. I mean, and he was like, look, I need something to be able to, track these billions of dollars in software, Larry, and not have a reputation, repetition of 1990.
Excel.
Right. So, and Larry was like, yeah, great, go build a spreadsheet. So he leaves and goes and forms Siebel, right? And at Siebel, there was this thing, about 360-degree view of the customer, which all of us thought was amazing, right? Oh my God, I'm finally going to be able to understand what my customer is doing, the deals. I mean, which rep wouldn't love that, right? Unfortunately, it turned into more something that a CRO or upper management used to inspect deals and monitor deals and tell you what you're not doing, versus really trying to help the AE understand how he could put more dollars in his pocket. And we're strong believers that, we're here to cure the sins of the past, right? I worked at Salesforce, and I really thought that Salesforce was going to be vastly different. And for a while, it was agile and loved by everyone, albeit it was the tallest midget in the room, because at the end of the day, Salesforce was marginally better than Siebel, right? Siebel had all these bells and whistles. Half the time you couldn't understand, what they were there for, but they looked cute and they looked amazing and filled the spreadsheet out, check, right? Yep. But for us, when I was at Salesforce, I had to mandate that my AEs put in their deals into Salesforce, otherwise I wouldn't pay them. Unfortunately, that's not the message you can take to market today. It's a different generation. And there's options out there, even in this economic environment. So the real question is, how can you delight the end user, right? And how can there be an exchange of value between the company and the end user so he's seeing value out of it? And that's one of the reasons, we're so excited about Mickey. We're seeing about 96 to 98% adoption across the enterprise, which is unheard. I mean, Salesforce is at best 16 to 18%, right? On a weekly or daily basis. But people are living in Mickey and people are living in Aviso because they've got the ability now to, at a very basic level, to talk to data. And when I say talk to data, they can use Mickey to update Salesforce. So they check mark. They can use Mickey to go and look at the last Zoom call they had, understand what the sentiment was in that call, understand if they were buying signals, take that information, write an email, and share it with their executive, right? So don't call me up. Here's all the details you want. You can go into Aviso and look at it. But guess what? If you've got an anathema to operate, to revenue operation systems, let me dumb it down for you. Here's an email spelling it out for you, Mr. SVP, Mr. EVP, etc. Right? And that's amazing because, like I said, it takes that grunt and that suck work out, that rote work that takes up so much time. It frees up 10 to 15%, of your day. We're looking at anywhere from 10 hours to 12 hours of work that AEs can use now to do what they do best, which is spend time with their customers, understand what their customers are doing. And we go further, right? When I was at PeopleSoft, and then we got bought by Oracle, and and then Salesforce, of course. At Oracle, I did my first year there. I did 1,400% of my number, and obviously I was a Section 21. They had to report me and all that because I had a $3.5 million commission check. On a $4 million quota, I did 160 million, which was unheard of. We broke the curve, right? But I was probably the least experienced sales rep in the entire company for my first year in sales. But what I did do was I just took the philosophy I had at McKinsey, which is you work 16 hours a day and you outwork the person on the right, you outwork the person on the left, you learn more about your customer. And then, of course, you get lucky and have a Scott McNeely, who's a good buddy of yours, who's your sponsor at Sun. And then you get lucky and you have a great sponsor at Dell. And then you're lucky again. And, since you've worked so hard, you get a great sponsor like John Chambers, right? So with those three folks, they kind of helped me get to my number, I will say. But where I was going with that is, I spent a lot of time looking at 10Ks, poring over them, which, is not something that's a fun task for most AEs out there, right? Looking at the last earnings call, trying to understand, executive backgrounds, trying to understand what have people actually sold them before, because it was a mess. The data wasn't anywhere. It was in 10 different systems, right? And then going in every conversation with something of value that I felt my customers would really want. And Mickey does that for you today. I mean, you go to Mickey and say, hey, pull up the last earnings call of a new customer, do an analysis. What are their M&A objectives? Map that to my product set. Done. Right. Hey, Mickey, can you go update Salesforce for me? Change the stage. Can you update next steps for me with the last call I had with the customer? Or maybe your customer doesn't like coming on Zoom. So you say, hey, the last email I got from him, can you look at that? Look at the sentiment of that email. What do you think of the risk? Were there any competitive mentions? Can you pull that out? Write a summary for me so I can send it to my SC. I can send it to the other folks in the organization. And all of this, you're probably thinking, Trevor, that's not possible. But it is, and I'll tell you why. Because, in some ways, people look at ChatGPT or OpenAI as being this silver bullet or this white knight, and it's not, right? You got to understand what generative AI is. And generative AI, at a very basic level, it's about syllogisms, right? So all men are mortal, or all women are mortal. So I want to be both. So Aristotle's a mortal, or Cleopatra's a mortal. Take your pick, right? But either way, that's a syllogism, right? And what ChatGPT and OpenAI do a very effective job is what we call, if you're in computers, of course, it's easy to understand this, autocomplete. It autocompletes your sentence based on the fact that it's gone through huge amounts of data, found data that's a simile, or looks at data that helps provide information about what you want to complete your sentence with or find information about. What it can't do is complex computations. And when you're saying complex computations, you're going to say, well, Trevor, but I've seen OpenAI, there was an interview with Bill at Microsoft, and basically it passed this level A exam. Yes, I mean, if you think about pi, right? It's one of my favorite numbers. So when you look at pi, 3.1415, right? Most people know that. And if you want to be cute, you can go and say, okay, well, 926, 535, 897. If you want to be really cute, you can say 93. You can then go to 932, 384, 795, etc., etc., etc. And I can go to 31 decimals. And I have a limited corpus because I'm a human being, right? But I'm also autistic. So with numbers, I can go a little further, right? But ChatGPT can look at basically 3 trillion decimals, and I know it's useless information, but to give you an example, 3 trillion decimals in about 21 days. So 21 days to calculate 3 trillion decimals, right? So it can do that. But if I ask ChatGPT, tell me what the temperature is on the 7th moon of Jupiter, it's going to look at me and be like, I'm an AI system, and I don't know what you're talking about, right? Because that information doesn't exist. We'd have to send a space flight out there to the moon, get that information, then ChatGPT could use it. So where I'm going with this is you need a combination of ChatGPT and you need a combination of NLP and machine learning and deep learning models to provide the insights. And then you can talk to data. And that's what Mickey is, and that's what we do. Hope that helps. But that was a primer in why I think Mickey's special.
So if I'm to boil this down, I mean, you've said a few things that kind of stuck out in my head, where the one was, the CRO last 18 months, which is about the same as the CMO. So they both get thrown out the same time for the most part.
Yeah.
And if I'm listening to what you're describing, this is essentially a life hack because marketing, sales, and demand gen are so damn dysfunctional and the data's splattered all over the place. Is that roughly correct?
That's a really good line. I'm going to use that marketing line because
I just gave you your marketing tip.
That was impressive, Larry. I've never thought of it that way, right? Sometimes I think it's good to understand the forest from the trees, and Larry just did that for me. But it is
it's almost like do you wait for these numbnuts to restructure and transform so they do all this stuff, which will take years and never happen anyway because they only got 18 months? Or do you just have this AI layer to make them a little less dysfunctional?
Yeah, I mean, and you got these amazing sales leaders out there, right? Who are frustrated because they got 6 different systems, 8 different systems. There's different code lines, as you guys are aware. By the time you finish one implementation, they got another version out, so then you're going to start that. So there's no single source of truth, right? And that's the challenge, right? And that's where Aviso comes in from an architectural perspective, Larry. And you probably the perfect entree, which is basically we sit across all these systems. And because we're able to pull insights from all these systems, at the end of the day, what Mickey really is a different kind of UI. It's a conversational UI, right? That's really what generative AI is. It allows you at a very basic level to talk to your data or talk to AI. And that's what Mickey's doing. It's not like, it's not like solving world hunger, but what it is doing is a life hack where now you have access to information in a ubiquitous fashion throughout the enterprise, across all the systems. You can go and do your job on day one without knowing how to use Salesforce, without knowing how to use Marketo, without knowing how to use Aviso. And why should you? You were not hired to be an expert in my software. You were hired to go sell and close business, be an expert in your company's product, as you well know. and put dollars in your pocket, and at the end of the day, deliver some exciting results, so I can be a CRO for the next 6 years, right? So.
Okay, so what is interesting is that we keep talking about AI, and the second most talked about item other than AI is PLG out here in the Valley.
Yep.
Right? Everyone's talking about product-led growth. That's great. There's sales motions all over the crap. Challenger sales is dead, thank God. And what are we doing? In this model, like, people are trying to sell differently, but it's a weird market. This is a very bizarre economic market. So,
it is.
What are you seeing trends-wise?
So trends-wise, what we're seeing is, we're seeing an opportunity from going from good to great, right? And what I mean by that is, you can make your chops in this market. For 10 years, you threw a dart at the board and you got a deal. And because you had this, you had free money, you had low interest rates. No one wants to earn 1% in the bank, so why don't I invest it in software? That's the best thing out there, right? And with that free money, you could go out with a shopping cart and buy every single piece of software in the world. So you have PLG motions, of course, and we're seeing PLG has its place. So does consumption forecasting, which Aviso does, and Aviso prides itself on being 90 to 99% accurate in consumption forecasting for companies like New Relic, which most people think I'm telling them a story until they speak to New Relic, and then they're like, "How do you do it?"
Hold on. If you're that accurate on consumption models, right? Can you get actually on dynamic pricing for software?
Well, yeah, because if you're looking at dynamic pricing for software, it's market supply and demand, right? So, for example,
but there's always that sales rep at the end of the quarter that discounts the deal, that screws everything up in the dynamic pricing model.
And that's where transparency is key, right? Because what we do is we send something called notification. So what we do is, when we see a rep going in a direction where he's gonna basically, for lack of a better word, pull his pants down, we give him a couple of hints. One, here's the historical discount rate. Here's the historical behavior of this customer in terms of their buying motion in the last week of the quarter. They do this every time because believe it or not, human beings are creatures of habit. We may not realize it, but psychologically, we do the same thing every year. And every year, some customers have trained their procurement teams to go in Q4, last week of the quarter, disappear for 3 or 4 days, come on the last day, and you're going to pull your pants down, right? So
I always buy my car December 31st. What about you?
Well, there you go. See, that's what I mean, right? Believe it or not, when we were at Oracle, Salesforce closes its business about 5 o'clock in the evening because they're always so amazing, right? And I got a heart attack when that happened the first time I was there. But when I was at Oracle, we go to like 12:29, 12:29.5.
Hawaii time? Hawaii?
Like, you know what? I asked them if I could open an office in Hawaii, so I got the extra 3 hours, and they looked at me like I was smoking something good, right? But I literally asked them that same year I did 1,400% of my number. I could have done 1,600%, and I missed a deal because it came in at 12:37. Believe it or not, and it didn't get booked, right? So,
well, once you make that deal cut, then you go to Autobahn Motors on 12/31, and at 7 p.m. you cut the deal too. You get your car, and you're good to go. We're here with Trevor Templar, having an amazing conversation about the future of revenue ops, and of course, where people are actually heading in revenue platforms. He's the CEO of Aviso AI. Thank you for being here. You can follow him on Twitter or X at @TTemplar, TEMPLAR. Thank you for being on the show.
Pleasure. Thank you so much, guys. Take care.
Good chat.
All right. That is crazy.
Yeah, I
just gotten deep into like best practices on cybersecurity, best practices on revenue, and now I'm going to introduce 2 interesting guests who've written an amazing book. So
I think our theme so far has been dysfunction. Dysfunction in revenue, dysfunction in cybersecurity, and now we're talking startups. So
hopefully there's less dysfunction in these startups. Well, hey,
we're here to fix, right?
We're going to welcome Catalina Daniels and, of course, Jim Sherman. I'm going to read your bios in serial order. So Catalina, welcome. Catalina Daniels graduated from HBS in 1991 and the Free University of Brussels. She spent the first 17 years of her career at McKinsey, where she became a partner, and then she left and became an entrepreneur and eventually an angel investor. She's a venture partner at Entrepreneurs Roundtable Accelerator, which is ERA, and the prominent New York-based tech accelerator, where she actually mentors U.S. entrepreneurs and helps non-U.S. entrepreneurs figure out how to expand in the U.S. Catalina sits on multiple boards and loves coaching young entrepreneurs. A Belgium national, she splits her time between New York, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Spain. So welcome to the show, Catalina.
Great to be here. Thank you.
We're excited to have you. Jim Sherman, also is HBS graduate. This is a nice cohort in 1991. I know a lot of people in that 91 cohort. And Stanford University. So, and he started his career at Bain & Company as a consultant, then spent several years working in media with Time Inc. and Pearson. And in 1997, he launched the internet division for Martha Stewart Living. He also became a serial internet entrepreneur, launching 3 ventures, including an internet strategy consulting firm, Sherman's Travel Media, and an e-commerce firm. And he also became an active investor in New York startups and has been a mentor to entrepreneurs and sits on the board of HBS Alumni Angels of New York. And he lives in Manhattan and Bellport, New York. Jim, welcome to the shore.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you here. So let's talk more.
Likewise, we're delighted on this beautiful day from sunny Manhattan.
Ah, there you go. Look at this. Smart startup.
Ah, there it is. How'd you do that? That's great.
So I guess let's just start at the top. Why did you write the book, and what were some of the surprises?
Well, in a nutshell, the reason we wrote the book is that there's a very interesting statistic out there that of all seeded startups, 70% of them actually fail.
Oh, yeah.
It's a pretty shocking statistic. Only 10% have any measure of success. So the odds are pretty much stacked against you. And the reason that we wanted to write the book, as it outlined Ray earlier, both of us have been entrepreneurs. We thought it would be more powerful to interview other HBS founders of companies and really gather their collective wisdom and what they wish they had known, what they may have learned the hard way, and basically try to help people improve their odds of success in starting off on this journey. Yeah. And to answer your other question, sorry, about some surprises, maybe Catalina, you want to mention?
I can comment that we get that question quite a lot, and it's really difficult to answer because there have been many surprises. So we've been there, done that, talked to all these people, and frankly, we started off with some thoughts about what we would write about in the book, what the content of the book would be like, and ended up with something totally different. One of the surprises, just to mention one, is the founding team and what it should look like. Okay, so there is this myth that a twosome or a threesome is best founding team for a startup. A CEO and a CTO, and then possibly next to that, a CMO or a COO, depending on the startup. That's the myth. That's the founding team you want to have. Well, in our research and in our interviews, we heard something else. Everything works. You can go solo. We saw a team of 5 recruited by a headhunter, fairly unusual. We saw a mom with her son, a married couple, best friends. All of the previous I've mentioned don't tick the box of the typical 2 or threesome, And so the message we have is the founding team should be something that works for you as an individual, rather than something that is set to 2 or threesome. First thing you need to figure out is, can you go solo? Do you go solo? And some people would rather go solo because they like to take decisions by themselves. They don't want to be burdened by somebody else. They don't need the emotional support. So they just want to go solo. If you're a first-time entrepreneur, it's probably a little bit dangerous or more difficult to go solo, but some did it and some were successful at it. Now, if you don't want to go solo, you need to find a co-founder. But it doesn't need to be an equal co-founder. It can also be a junior co-founder. And whatever co-founder you get on board, what really matters is 2 things. One is shared values. You'd better have shared values and a shared vision, because otherwise, first big problem, big bump in the road, you might get into difficult discussions. So when choosing a co-founder, one of the most critical things is shared value. And then the other thing is thinking about the skills you need to pull off the business, okay? And so, those are things that are more important than the twosome or the threesome, I would say.
This is some great unconventional wisdom, right? That's really what your book is about, right? You're breaking all the rules, all the conventional wisdoms that are there. And I think that's a very important thing. right? But I do want to actually turn it around on you, because the book's about these other 18 co-founders. You founded
Yep.
Sweetwell, which is the sugar replacement, and
Yeah.
we got Hampton's Lane over on the other side from Jim, right? And Hampton's Lane was like pretty successful. So what did you guys learn in those experiences that seemed different than what was going on in the book? So.
Well, actually, sure. I mean, in terms of Hamptons and what we learned in the book, my gosh, I think that one of the surprises, I think, for sure, is how creative people were in validating demand. And I think that, to be honest, in my case with Hampton's Lane or with Sherman's Travel that I started, went forward in what I would consider a very traditional direction. However, when we did our interviews with the founders of other companies, I was really impressed with how creative they came up with validating demand without spending practically a dime. I mean, so in other words, I'll give you a couple examples. With Rent the Runway, they never even did a website. Jen and Jenny got going literally by doing pop-up shops, pop-up stores on college campuses with racks of clothing that they borrowed actually from friends, designer dresses. And they wanted to merely validate, did women want to rent a dress? This has not been done before. Would there be demand for this? Not only did they not only pop-ups, but they videotaped the interaction with the customers. And that was really so that they could demonstrate to their potential investors, which are mainly were men, frankly, who didn't have a good feel for the opportunity, to demonstrate the passion that their customers had for this. Anyway, it was very important with that. Another example would be really sort of really effective at how they went at this with Yumble Kids, fresh meals for children, saving the parents time and having to prepare anything. Dave Parker, founder, before they did a functioning website, there were no back-end operations here, nothing complicated. They spent no money. Literally, all they did was post on a Facebook mommy group. And in the Facebook mommy group, they put up the offer of getting these meals freshly prepared for your children. And they wanted to test the response to this. And they were flooded with parents that wanted to take them up on the offer. And they literally were running the operation out of their own apartment kitchen. And his wife, Joanna, personally did the deliveries to their customers in New York in the very beginning. And they were thrilled when they got $1 tip.
I can feel the passion, like coming from you, from their passion, which is the fuel. And when you did Sherman's Travel Media, right, that there's a passion there. That's something you love doing, right? And to you, Catalina, like, what's the passion for sugar replacement, right? That you were looking at there.
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I think passion is a trait that we find with everybody we interviewed. And I think it's a trait of entrepreneurs. In my case, it's a great question to ask, what was my passion for sugar replacement? It was actually driven by the fact that I wanted to help a lot of people not have sugar. I have an aunt who died from diabetes. I've always had too much sugar in my blood, thank God, and I'm knocking on wood here, I don't have diabetes. But it was, for me, a way to basically do something that, in my own sense, would make the world a better world. And that's what we've heard from many of the entrepreneurs we talked to. It was not about, making money. Yes, it's important in the end, but it was not the first goal. The first goal was to create something and the freedom to do so.
So I'm hearing, a decent amount of ingredients to what makes a good idea and something to pursue. I guess when do you know, like, if you have this idea, you have the passion, you think it might make money, you solve some problem of some sort, when do you know it's go time and I should give this a whirl?
Well, I think that the key point, and we actually have a chapter in the book that is titled "Good Feedback is Not Good Enough." And really, that's the essence of it, because you need massively good feedback for whatever idea you are pursuing. And so this was emphasized, frankly, by several entrepreneurs.
All of them.
All of them, because And in retrospect, if the feedback wasn't massively good, well, those were we have a handful that didn't quite succeed, and you can look back at the history, and it was because they had massively good feedback. So it's very important to ask the right people. So it can't be just your friends or your family. You need to ask the right people. And as one of the entrepreneurs, Justin from Henry the Dentist, said, you could throw out the top 15% that are overflowing praise, throw out the bottom 15%, and really look at that middle 70%. What feedback are you getting from those people? So you need to really look at that qualitatively. And in addition, it's just really important to understand that you're getting the feedback from the right constituencies. So for example, in the case of Sygnia, and Eric Price, recognizes this, he didn't really talk to all the right people. He based too much of it. This was a dermatology app. And between his mother, he was a co-founder with his mom, who's a dermatologist. And he relied a bit too much on her own instincts, her own passion for the product, instead of talking to dermatologists around the country, or talking to the end users of the app, frankly, the patients, those that would use it, and would they pay for it. So you have to be very careful to get the feedback from the right people. It has to be massively good. Another quick example is Matt Salzberg of Blue Apron. Prior to launching Blue Apron, he had another venture, by the way. It was called Petri Dish. It was a crowdfunding site for science projects. Yep. He said it was reasonably successful. It was okay, but it wasn't massively successful. He wasn't getting the massively good feedback compared to later when he launched Blue Apron. The feedback from Blue Apron customers were, he'd get emails that said, "You saved my marriage with this product."
Good feedback is not good enough. Sounds pretty obvious, but frankly, in the mindset of an entrepreneur, when you have an idea in mind, when you have a product that you're developing, an MVP or whatever, you really believe in it, and you only want to hear the good feedback. And so it's really critical to basically be open to what people tell you, and not to go for it until you get this overwhelmingly positive feedback, because every invested time and money you're going to put in there might be wasted, because you're going to be thrown back to the drawing board to basically change your product until you get that overwhelmingly positive feedback.
All right, so I got the right team, I got the right product. Now I got to go raise some money, right? We're in a down market. Unless you're an AI startup, nobody cares, right? Like, how do you raise How do you raise money the right way? And you also have a very important point in the book. How do you raise money in the right way so that you have the right exit? So,
well, now you've asked a bunch of questions in there, and we can tease out only some of that, I think. But in a tough market, I think in to raise, the first question we like to ask always is, do you need to raise venture capital? It's a very important question to ask. Can you get the business and grow it to a nice size without it? Josh Hicks of Plated pointed out there are many wonderful business ideas that can be terrific $50 million a year e-commerce ventures that don't require outside capital. And it can be a great business, lifestyle business for you and your family. And you don't want to raise venture capital. First of all, the VCs wouldn't be interested, but even if they were, and it could be toxic to the venture anyway, if you were to go down that path and it turned out that way. So you have to ask yourself a question. Assuming you do raise venture capital, and given the tough climate that we're in, you should try to bootstrap as long as you can. Bootstrap it and get as far as along the way, and try to demonstrate as much of product fit as you can before seeking formal financing. And there are a lot of advantages of this. I'll go into in the book. There are many, many advantages. I mean, one is it takes smaller steps, and then when you make mistakes, and by the way, you will make mistakes, then they're going to be less costly. There'll be less costly mistakes. Second, you're going to be able to iterate faster because you're iterating through smaller steps. And then thirdly, you are going to learn the most creative way forward. You're going to find the most creative path forward when you have added resources. So these are some of the advantages of bootstrapping, and it's to your advantage to do it at any time, but it's particularly important in a tough investment climate.
Let me say a few words about how to raise funds, and then I'll hand over to you for exit. This is a huge topic, obviously. We could have written a book about that, or, two. But how to raise funds? I mean, the mistake you don't want to make is get up one morning, think, okay, this is the beginning of my fundraising process. I'm going to send 200 emails, and out of these, I'll get 10 meetings, and somebody is going to invest in my company. It doesn't work that way. The advice we give to people is first do your homework. Not every VC invests in your type of company, in your type of founder, in your stage of development, or whatever. And believe it or not, we see a lot of entrepreneurs making that mistake. So do your homework, and there is a lot to that. Second point, don't wake up one morning and reach out to these people and think they're going to invest in you. Build trust. Leverage your network to get to people, to get warm intros. If you don't have them, reach out to people, keep on reaching out, but take into account that it's going to take time, okay, to get on people's agenda and to build the trust, okay? And then there are a bunch of other things in the book about how to think about approaching VCs and fundraising. But obviously the importance of a first impression and what you need to do for that, how to set the dominoes. Don't go to your favorite investor first because you're going to make a lot of mistakes. So you need to learn, listen from the feedback you get and learn, etc. And I'm going to keep it to this because you might want to say something about the importance of fundraising for your exit.
Yes, if we have the time.
Yeah, let's give you 30 seconds to see if we can pull it through. So go ahead.
Well, your fundraising is going to have a huge impact on the exit story. So you have to make sure you have retained exit optionality we talk about in the book, which meaning, do you have an exit off ramp for a lesser exit amount? If that's a requirement, then you need to have exit optionality. Keep that in mind, be capital efficient. And the last thing I'd say is to always be prepared contacts with your potential acquirers early on, because there's so many uncontrollables that are going to hit you, and exit will be forced upon you when you least expect it.
Wow. Hey, Larry, anything on your end?
No, I mean, I only have one quick question, which was just like scale. So if you, like, we follow software, obviously, right? So there is a $1 billion in sale wall that companies either get to, and that's like the end of them, or you get to and then you become like ServiceNow, Salesforce, etc. What is that difference that gets a company to go from $1 billion to BAM, or $1 billion to zombie company?
Those are easy question to answer in 30 seconds, I must say.
More like 15, but
read the book.
Exactly, read the book. I think there are a lot of things that really influence your path from 1 billion to something else. Obviously, it starts with the leaders and the founding team and whether or not they stay in place or leave the space to somebody else, because it becomes a different ball game in terms of running that kind of company. It's about pivoting at the right time. I don't think there is any company that started off, reached 1 billion, and then onward without adding new things, adding strategy and so forth. It's about execution, and execution becomes difficult as of a certain stage. It's about hiring and the team and the skills you have on board, etc. So it's impossible to say one thing, but it's a bunch of things that you need to get right. Basically shoot as a rocket to the moon. But I think it does start with the founding team and the skills of that team to basically keep on being the ones pushing the ball for that company or not.
We talk about what's your 2.0 basically, and that is the challenge. And all the companies we spoke to had that challenge.
Very, very true. We're here with Catalina Daniels, Jim Sherman, author of Smart Startups, What Every Entrepreneur Needs to Know, advice from 18 HBS founders. And of course, more importantly, you can get it on Amazon. It just came out October 10th, hot off the presses, and is published by Harper. So thanks a lot so much for being on the show, and we'll be reading the book.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Larry.
Larry. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Ray. Thank you.
Oh my God, Larry, what an amazing show.
I was just trying to figure out that $1 billion mark. I've seen it in software for years.
Or it could be the $10 to $100 million if you're not a tech company, right? You can definitely see that popping up.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a different ballgame entirely.
Yeah, so we're definitely seeing that across the board. So, quick summary on your end. What do you think? I mean, was this really dysfunction?
Well, I mean, revenue ops and marketing and sales, that's always dysfunction. I mean,
Yes.
it just is. And not only that, they have so many different systems. I mean, it's a mess. Cybersecurity, very interesting stuff. I mean, I do wonder, like, that ransomware calculator idea, I think's like, just something needs to be thought through, especially what you do after you pay the ransomware. And then the startup stuff was just interesting because, it's when do you know you have a good idea? And that feedback part was the big takeaway for me.
I love the unconventional wisdom. Exactly. That is amazing there. So,
Yeah.
But hey, next week, there will be no show. But the week after, episode 340, because we have Constellation Connected Enterprise, we'll have Dr. Geeta Nair, Executive Medical Director, former at Salesforce. And we've got James Burstall, CEO of Argonon and author of The Flexible Method, Prepare to Prosper in the New Global Crisis. And we'll have probably one additional special guest. So thanks a lot for listening to the show. If it's 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern on a Friday, catch Disrupt TV. Thanks all for listening.
Thanks a lot.